What's up, y'all? It's your girl Amanda, and we are back with another episode of Mandy's Entertainment Reviews. So, for this episode, we are doing the Trouble Man: The Final Days of Marvin Gaye documentary. Now, this documentary I found randomly on YouTube at 4 o'clock in the morning, and it was originally aired on A&E back in the 90s. So A&E, I always thought A&E was kind of boring back in the day, but I didn't know it stood for Arts and Entertainment. And as the years went by, they started producing some like really, really good documentaries. For example, I did do a review on this documentary, the Janet Jackson documentary, that came out in like 2022 or whatever. But this originally aired in 1994, so it's about as old as I am. So my thoughts on this documentary is that it was a slow burner, no pickup, no, to me, happy memories on this documentary. Some of the stuff I knew from Jan's book, Janice Gay, who was his second wife, she wrote a book and it came out in like 2022. So, some things I knew from that, but overall, the documentary had like a dark feeling while watching. It was like sadness. And another reason why I decided to do this documentary is because I have an aunt and she loves Marvin Gaye. And I was telling her at Easter dinner that I had just read Jan's book, but she read that one, but she also recommended me to read the biography that was written by David Fitz. So I just bought that on my Kindle. So right now I am reading Arsenio Hall's book. So after I finish Arsenio's book, I'm gonna read that book as well. So as you guys know, I review my reviews in KWL. K is want to know, or know, want to know and learned, not liked. So what do I know is that Marvin Gaye was one of Motown's top singers. So he had his hits. You're All I Need to Get By. I heard it through the grapevine. He did duos with Tammy Terrell. Like he was literally one of Motown's stars. And I always thought he was from Detroit, but he's actually from Washington D.C. I forgot to put that down. He was married twice to Anna Gordy, who is a relative to Berry Gordy. I think his sister. I think she was his sister. And then he was married to Jan Gay. He made the album What's Going On, and to me, I always say like every black person needs to have that album in their collection. Doesn't matter if it's vinyl, doesn't matter if it's CD, doesn't matter if it's tape, doesn't matter if it's on your streaming. Just have that album. I had that album on CD, and then I sold my CDs, but I ended up putting on my Apple Music, so it's in my library as well. And I do love that album. I grew up listening to Marvin Gaye, Motown, soul, all that stuff. So I got it for sure. He followed his own way, and he didn't follow trends in music. Now let me explain the one time he did, in my opinion, and it did not work. Sanctify, you know what? It came out after he died in 1984. I see why that song never really saw like the light of day because it's just, here's Marvin Gaye's box. Here's outside of it and way down the street. So I never got with that song. It's a funny song. Like I listen to it from time to time, but it's a long far away from Got to Give It Up and what's going on and all that stuff. I just know he was high off some when he made that song. He had a massive drug problem and also a tax problem, and because of the tax problem he did leave or live overseas. He was a ladies man. My aunt, the same aunt I was talking about earlier, she said she went to a Marvin Gaye concert, and she actually got a rose. So of course that would have been an idea for Marvin Gaye. He had suffered from severe mental issues, paranoia, all that stuff, and he was killed by his father in April of 1984. So, what did I want to know? I didn't want to know a lot because I feel like reading Jan's book and getting ready to read David Fitz's book, I'm going to like probably not learn a lot. So, I didn't really learn a lot with this one. So I wanted to know, did Marvin work on any music before he died? So what I mean by that was he in the studio, like physically in the studio? Was he making plans to make new music? What I mean by that is, Was he thinking out his next project? Okay, this is going on the album. This is going on the album. We're going to do this for the next album. You know what I mean? Just in a like production, pre production situation. Was he high on drugs? And I need confirmation when he made that sanctified, you know what song? And what was the backstory of it? And lastly, will his kids be featured in the doc? So it came out in 94, so his children would have been grown because they were born in the early 70s. So will that happen? So, what did I learn? He was described as stubborn, so it was like more of a confirmation. Jen did say that he was stubborn, but it was just confirmation outside of like, you know, his wife and maybe some of his not inner circle, but the people he worked with. He wore some ugly show outfits. Like there was this one scene, y'all. This man was coming out to perform Let's Get It On. He had on like the ugliest green suit. It looked more appropriate for St. Patrick's Day or something. It was just so ugly. And then but then there were other times he was well dressed, like when he sang for the Lakers, like that was a nice suit. There's a picture of him and his in Jan in the airport or something. That was a nice suit. But them show shoot suits was so ugly. Oh my god. He did say that his most important thing in life is his music, of course. When you are an artist, the most important thing is your art and getting it out to your fans. He lived in a dirty apartment in London. I was kind of shocked to learn that he had a dirty apartment in London, but then again, I went back to Jan's book and she said when they started like quote unquote dating, he had like a small apartment in LA, like he wasn't living in a mansion with Anna Gordy, and she described it as like, you know, not beneath him, but like, you know, it just wasn't superstar status, I should say. So it was not shocking, but shocking to learn he had a dirty apartment in London. His father, as we all know, was a pastor, very involved in the church. He requested that his children were to be, you know, heavy in the church with church activities and stuff. Now, can we say religious psychosis? Because that is just too much. And kids deserve to be doing stuff outside of, you know, school and church and let them be kids. That was just too much for them. Um, They didn't eat pork growing up because it wasn't kosher, mainly because they were raised Hebrew Pentecostal with, you know, Jewish beliefs. That does not make any sense to me one bit. Either you're Jewish or you're Pentecostal, and I know some Pentecostal people that eat pork. Like, I didn't know that we were, you know, subdividing, you know, religions like that. I never heard of Hebrew Pentecostal. I've heard of Pentecostal and I've heard of Judaism, but never put together. He has a brother named Frankie that Jan actually talked a lot about in his book. He sang background on Got to Give It Up with her. He looks just like him. He passed away in 2001. I looked it up after the documentary. He looked just like his brother. Let's see. Berry Gordy bought the Motown house in 1959 and it was open 24/7. The reason why I said that is because I always thought that the Motown house was bought when like Motown really took off in like the 60s. So I didn't know he bought it in 59. And I never knew it was open 24/7 for them to record music because like any other, you know, recording studio, you have a certain time amount, record your stuff, get out. But no, for the Motown artists, it was open 24/7 and it was bought in 1959. Marvin's father thought Marvin didn't have real success. Again, it's because of his religious psychosis. Like, I guess success to him was, you know, being in heaven with the Lord, like right next to the Lord, literally. Like, but his real success with the money, the fame, and all that stuff, that wasn't real to him. And that's what's messed up. Like, it would damage any kid, honestly, because Marvin worked so hard to get to where he was, and his father just looks at him and say, "Oh, that's not real success. Like that really would hurt." Um, Marvin knew Harvey Fuqua, and who Harvey Fuqua was in the music business, and I bet a lot of people didn't know that Harvey Fuqua is a relative to Antoine Fuqua, who is the husband of Layla Rashawn, who is the director. Well, not Layla Rashawn, but Antoine Fuqua is the rel Antoine. Hold on. Okay, so Harvey Fuqua is the uncle to Antoine Fuqua, who's married to Leela Rashana, and Antoine is the director of the new Michael Jackson movie. There, I said it right. Didn't want to get that wrong. So on Twitter, like a year ago, I saw a video of Marvin singing. He was laying down, right? And people was joking, this is how much minimum I'm given when I go to work. And it was Marvin. He was, I guess, having like a jam session or a practice session. He was laying down on the couch. I always thought that was Marvin Gaye probably performing or practicing somewhere in like, um, what's it called, in LA or something, right? Nope. Turns out he was in Belgium. So this was during a time where he was living overseas and kind of staying away from America. So he stayed away from LA to get away from the drugs and nightlife. I get it, but at the same time, it don't work like that because other towns and countries do have big cities and nightlife, and drugs are kind of involved in that too. Um, if you guys listen to Sexual Healing, the guy whispering "Wake up" is not Marvin Gaye. I always thought it was, but it wasn't. And he won a Grammy for Sexual Healing, which that I did not know. And his father was upset that he was left out the Grammy speech, which that should not be a surprise because you told this man that you did not have real success, you didn't support his career. So what's the point of him even thanking you in his Grammy speech? Did you just stop to think about that? Let's see. There is footage of his final tour in 1983. I didn't know about a final tour in 1983. I just thought, things got so bad that he was just hiding. But there is actual footage of it. Very cloudy footage. Of course, it's from 1983, so yeah. Someone died on his tour from suicide, and he always thought it was someone trying to kill him, so that was the paranoia in him. He thought he was surrounded by evil, so we all know that was drugs. At the same time, he wanted to be close to his family. He wanted to be family oriented. So he had unconditional love for his family, which was good. He wore a robe and was high and paranoid a lot. Now, there is conflicted stories about the gun that killed Marvin Gaye. So I heard that Marvin bought the gun for his father as a gift. And then there's also Marvin bought the gun for protection. So I didn't know there was two. I just know the story is, Marvin Gaye's father pulled the trigger. That's all I knew. I didn't know there was footage of his father talking in court. Now, I've seen footage of his father in court, like just standing, in the little, like, defendant box or whatever, but I never saw him speak in court. And also, lastly, Marvin Gaye was cremated, so he was never buried in, like, Forest Lawn in LA or something, so he's probably spread it amongst the nature of the world, so yeah. What did I like about this documentary? Honestly, if Marvin Gaye was still around today, he'd do very well in like ASMR because his voice was like very calming because they used his archive recording of his voice. I loved hearing him sing the Lord's Prayer. Anytime anybody sings the Lord's Prayer, it sounds amazing. Seeing old commercials, because again, this was from 1994. Somebody taped it and put it and uploaded it to YouTube like 10-15 years ago. It featured David Ritz, who wrote the biography I'm about to read, and Marvin did talk about his children in a way, and I thought that the Grammy speech that he did was so sweet, where he said, I want to get out of here, but we don't have no time. Like, he said something like that, but he did, like, kind of send a message to his children in the Grammy speech. And what I disliked is that, this documentary is kind of older than me. I would have loved to see, like, a more, I don't want to say modern, but, like, maybe a more later documentary with, like, a lot of graphic images, maybe updated interviews and all that stuff to see what some of these people look like if they're still alive. So, and lastly, it's just a sad story of talent. Need I say more? So that is my review on the Troubled Man documentary. If you want to check it out, it is on YouTube. You just probably have to type it in. It's on there. It's like a couple versions on there. But thank y'all for listening. Talk to you later. Peace.